JKB back with another episode. Today on the show I'm reviewing Days Gone. Thank you to Sony for sending over the review copy, and I will be avoiding spoilers. After spending the last week and a half with Days Gone, I've come to the conclusion that this is one of my favorite open world games ever made. A lot of you asked me on Twitter, what makes Days Gone stand out from the rest of the open world games of this generation? And the answer is simple. Its unpredictable nature. This is the amalgamation of the best design choices of this generation all put into a world that's unforgiving. While you may have seen many of these ideas in other video games, you've never seen them come together to create a survival horror game quite like this before. You play as Deacon St. John, a former outlaw turned into a drifter and a bounty hunter who doesn't fit into the survival camps of this world. It's been 2 years since all hell broke loose and the world went into chaos. The game never uses the word zombie, but instead freakers, which I thought would be silly, kind of like, trying to be original, but yet, after spending a week with the game, it's actually kind of refreshing, and the slight spin on the zombie genre works just enough to set it apart from the usual genre showpiece. Overall, the story has one narrative, which I can't really discuss here without getting into spoilers, but I will say I really enjoyed the heart of this story and the characters you come across over the course of the game. It's definitely one of the reasons I'm in love with this video game, but it's the gameplay itself that brought me back even after finishing the main storyline. The graphics are not only on par with other AAA games of this generation, but they take things to an extreme with a stunning weather system and day and night cycle. You'll see and hear distant thunderstorms approaching. You'll be able to watch the sun rise and set. You'll also be absolutely terrified when a thick layer of fog rolls in over the forest. During heavy thunderstorms, you'll notice that the dirt roads turn into mud roads, which do affect the handling of your bike. It really is the finer details that add into the horror tone of the game. Trees will sway heavily during thunderstorms, and I think for me personally, the characters are the weakest visually at times in the game. The facial animations aren't what you'd expect after seeing how much work was put into the rest of the game. Overall, it's one of the best looking games in an open world genre of this generation. It seems the audio of most games is always underestimated in terms of its importance. However, in survival horror, the audio plays a major role in this genre. Not only is the atmosphere of the audio very important to be able to set the tone of a game of this nature, but the audio also comes from freakers as well. You'll hear thunderstorms approaching with soft rumbling in the background and slight screams of freakers in the distance coming for you. This really sets the tone of the game, especially when a storm hits and you're in the middle of clearing out a freaker nest. Freakers make a lot of sound in the game, and they do this to give you an indication of which direction they're coming from. You also have a small HUD on the bottom right hand of the screen that will notify you when an enemy is near. Most of the audio in this game is very subtle, but at times it comes together to create such an amazing atmosphere that I'm happy just putting headphones on and standing in a graveyard and listening to the thunder, but then also being terrified when a million freakers come running out after you. There's no way for me to tell you everything you can do in Days Gone, but there's never really a dull moment in the game in my personal opinion. If it isn't a group of freakers trying to eat you alive, it's a group of humans trying to kill you and take your gear. Or maybe it's a random wolf looking for dinner, or perhaps it's a giant grizzly bear that randomly walks into town during a mission. You'll never really feel safe or prepared, and that's one of the best aspects of the game. This game is here to kill you. There's a ton of side missions that will force you across the giant open world map, and it's very important to point out, if you play this game like a typical open world game, you'll get a rude awakening. There's skill points in the game which you can earn to unlock new skills. The game is about survival, and while hardcore gamers may be able to force their way through the game without upgrading much, the game is designed to be non-linear. You'll have multiple missions open at once, which you can check in on from the main menus. You can decide what you want to do and how you want to do it. If you want to go in guns blazing, you can. However, you have to take into consideration of other factors in the game before rushing into a situation. Freakers work on sound, so if you're quiet and you sneak around, you'll be able to walk past most of them undetected. However, you'll also need to make sure you have enough ammo in case you trigger a major attack. You'll also need to keep in mind that your bike is a tool, but you need to maintain it. You'll be in situations where you run out of gas and you'll either have to find a gas station or a gas tank. Normally, you'd simply find a source of fuel and that be that, but this game is unforgiving. Not only will you need to deal with freakers and keep track of your ammo count, you'll also have to deal with other human campers that'll attack you on sight, even set up traps for you to fall into. All of these real-time situations can unfold within the blink of an eye, and that's what's different about this open world. Things happen that you would never expect. I've been shot off my bike as I raced down the road. I've had freakers jump onto me as I drove by, knocking me to the ground and damaging my bike. I've even seen a bear randomly show up during a mission where I had to stop what I was doing and handle the bear situation, as I was also dealing with looters and freakers. It was absolutely mayhem on screen. Another major part of the game is looting. You'll find loot everywhere in the game. You'll be able to loot cars by breaking into their trunks or hoods. You'll find all sorts of loot to help you either craft weapons or sell at base camp sites to help you pay for new weapons or upgrades for your bike. Your bike is fully upgradable from its engine to the paint job. It's another aspect of the RPG elements in this game that'll keep you coming back. You'll spend hours simply walking around collecting freaker ears, which are known as bounties. You could take these bounties back to a camp and trade them in for money for parts for your bike. However, some of the parts can only be purchased if you gain enough trust within that campsite. You do this by doing side missions for the campsite across the open world. Another amazing thing to do in this open world is to burn freaker nests. You'll have to burn them with a Molotov cocktail and then deal with the freakers that are in the nest asleep. They will jump out and run at you, but I love the design of these nests. It feels so dirty and gross, and the fact that the main character keeps talking about how bad they smell and how they smell like human feces, it's absolutely disgusting, and when they come running out at you, you just don't want to be near them. There's a weapon and item wheel that pops up when you hit L1. This is where you select your gear or craft items in the thick of things. So of course, hitting this wheel will slow down time, giving you a chance to collect your thoughts and decide which weapon is best for the situation you're facing. And finally, let's talk about the giant freaker swarms that will absolutely murder you in the game. You've probably seen these attacks in the trailer, but during the game, you hardly come by these situations until much further into the game, or maybe even when you beat it. I haven't felt this terrified playing a horror game for a long time. Not only do you have to plan out what you'll do, but it's very rewarding when you take down a giant group of the freakers. There's gear that you collect along the way that'll help you in these situations. It's one of the highlights of the gameplay, and it's pure video game joy. Like I said before, this game is made up from the best parts of the horror genre, known as survival horror or open world. The characters are the real horror of this game, and you don't really get a choice to be good or bad, you just get the choice to live or die. And since the world is always trying to kill you, you'll always want to fight back. I'm really impressed with the amount of dialogue you hear between characters, not only during the main story, but as random events as well. You'll walk by characters and hear them kind of talk under their breath. You'll have a dialogue system that's always tied into the movement of your character. One example is when I was on a bike at one point, I was talking over the walkie-talkie to my partner, and he was yelling, and I was yelling, trying to get through over the bike's motor, but I decided to just get off the bike, and I noticed that I started to talk in my regular voice. These audio cues are all over the game. If you walk away from a character that's trying to talk to you, you'll hear them call you some rude name or asshole. You'll notice that tons of random dialogue is so unexpected in the game. In fact, I could say that this is on a level that is beyond anything I've really seen in gaming for a while. It's one of those games shining achievements that you don't really see utilized that much, but it really does put you into a deeper sense of immersion. You really feel like you're part of the world because these characters are alive and kind of breathing around you. It really reminded me of Red Dead Redemption 2. Combat is broken down into 3 different types. You'll be able to use traps that you'll come across in the open world and also craft as you get further into the game. There's hand-to-hand combat with weapons that you'll find all around the world. Each of those weapons will have their own stats on damage and durability. This means that they will break if you do not use some of the loot scrap that you found around the open world to fix them. And lastly, you'll come across a bunch of different types of guns. Aiming does feel smooth further into the game when you start to upgrade your skill levels and get better weapons. There's a focus feature that slows down time. This runs on a limited timer and makes gun battles even more fun. Now, the game never crashed on me, but I did experience visual issues more than usual. Sometimes the game will hang for a second during some of the faster bike scenes. I noticed a little pop-in here and there. The audio at times decides to completely randomly cut out. I can overlook these issues. I've been thinking about it, and I can because it's so clear that this game is made by a studio that's passionate. These issues can be fixed with a patch, and while it's a little frustrating at times, they hardly really impacted my overall experience. The weakest part of the game is definitely the characters' animations. At times, it's kind of stunning watching this game in full effect. But some of the characters you interact with look a little strange, and the audio doesn't really match up with their mouth animations. For me, this is a little disappointing considering the level of detail put into every other aspect of the game. I think for some people, they will find the acting to be a little silly and over the top at times, but that's fine. That's fine. It's a video game, and I kind of overlook that. But yeah, the game's not going for an overall serious tone the whole time. Lastly, the Freakers' design is great. The animation on them is also very well done. You'll be able to hack and slash arms off. You'll see heads flying all over the place. I mean, I don't want to give too much away of the Freakers because this game is a must-play. You need to experience it for yourself. The world is one of the most detailed open worlds I've ever seen in video games, even putting it ahead of some of the other major video games out there. The atmosphere is incredible. You always feel like you're part of the world, other than when you're experiencing some of those issues, which is about 2% of the time, at least in my playthrough. You can enter almost every single building in the game, and this includes second floors, warehouses, bunkers. All of these things can be looted or to be used kind of as a hiding spot from your enemies, and trust me, further in the game, you'll be doing that a lot. One of the most important things you should know is to always keep your bike close by. Don't always stay on the roads, and make sure you collect the ears of all of the freakers you kill. Overall, it's hard to find fault in a game like this because its design is stellar from almost every aspect. It's safe to say that this is worth its full asking price, and it did live up to the hype in my opinion because of the amount of content in the game and the way that the day and night cycle, including the weather effects, really change up the game no matter how many times you visit an area, and especially after you beat the game. Even after you've beaten the game, which can go from, 30 to 40 hours on just the main storyline, this is not including all of the side missions, you'll still be able to come back to the game and have a blast. literally. I will say this game has a very dark undertone that's much more mature than your usual AAA game that was made for adults. It's not a great game for your young 10-year-old boy to sit and play alone in the dark, and definitely if you have a young girl, this game is morbid, gross, violent, and one of my favorite open world games to date. I can't wait to get back into the game and just play it over and over and over. What they've done with this current generation game is exactly what I want from a AAA video game set in a horror world. I'm going to give Days Gone a solid 8.5 out of 10 and say it's another must-own for the PlayStation family, and I'm so glad I upgraded my PS4 to the PS4 Pro just before I started reviewing this. I love this genre, and I love the randomness of this game. I know some people will find the story to be a little weak at times, but I didn't mind the outcome, and I'm looking forward to Days Gone 2 on the PlayStation 5. If you want to know more about the game, ask me in the comments below and I'll do my best to get an answer for you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode of JKB.